Hello, everybody. Welcome to our monthly webinar. This month, we will be talking about effective ways to use PR. Okay. We are being joined today by Miriam, and I would like to say hi to Miriam. How are you today?
I am doing very well. Thank you for having me.
This webinar today, we're going to talk about the who, what, why, and how of PR. And I'm going to let Miriam talk, a little bit about who she is, and then let's get started. So, Miriam, who are you?
So I put up little pictures so you can see my crew that I have in my life. But the reason I'm here, obviously, is because I am a very experienced PR professional. My name is spelled funny, and the reason is that I am originally not from the US. I'm from Switzerland, and I'm a German speaker, so the J is actually silent. So it's it like you said it, Miriam. Thank you for saying
Yeah,
it
and
right.
you'll have to excuse me because when we had met, I was saying Mir Jam. So,
Which is actually why I put it on the slide because it happens all the time. I have lived in the US for over 17 years at this point, and I live in Sheboygan, Wisconsin, which is very close to Kohler. Actually, I'm like 5 minutes away from my office where I used to work. And if you jump down a couple of bullet points, you'll see that that's actually where I worked for 14 years. And I was always in the PR department, and I led the kitchen and bath PR for the company for a very long time. So I'd say that I know the kitchen and bath space pretty well,
I
right?
would say so too. Yeah.
So I left Kohler about 3 years ago and became a freelance consultant. And I always heard from designers and people in the design industry that there really is a huge need to help designers with PR, but make it affordable and effective at the same time. So that's sort of the mission that I set out to do. And my support team is my three boys. They're 14 and 12 and 12. Yes, they are twins, the ones in the upper right hand corner. And we have a kitty and a dog, and of course, my husband Philippe, who is a French chef, and he runs a French restaurant in town. So we're a
Nice.
trilingual family, which
That's
you can
awesome.
think
That
is
is awesome.
funny. Yeah.
Okay. So, what is the whole purpose of PR? Why do they need it?
Well, PR really is part of the marketing mix, and I'm sure that everybody who's listening to this is doing some kind of marketing, and that can be mostly these days for designers. I'd say a lot of it is done on social media, which is super important. And I absolutely support that you should do that, especially Instagram, of course. But in the marketing space and in the communication space, it used to be very clear cut, right? There used to be advertising. That's what you pay for, and you get a placement in a magazine or on a radio station or anywhere. And there was PR, which was really only media relations, and that's largely what we're talking about here too. But what happened over the course of the last, I'd say, especially over the course of the last year, is that there has been there's a lot of gray. There's not the earned and the paid areas anymore, but it's all a little bit of a mix. And
Mhm.
I'm sure you can attest to this too,
Yes.
because you play in a lot of these different areas. But what differentiates PR really is that it still is earned coverage. So you can't buy it, but the way you earn it is by providing the media good content that they can use and that their readership or viewership or listenership is interested in. And when I say earned, um, you have to earn it with good quality content and effort and time investment, but really it is free, but we used to jokingly call it free R, but it's not because you do have to work for it, even if you don't have to pay for it. And maybe you have to hire somebody who's doing it for you, or you get some coaching, or however you want to do it. But it is overall very affordable, and what makes it super special is the third party credibility. So if you think about when you post on social media, you put a post up on Instagram or
Hmm.
Facebook, Pinterest, wherever, and you basically have to talk about how great you are yourself because you
Right.
own the channel, so you control the messaging. But how much more powerful and effective is it if somebody else says that about you? That's what
Right.
we call word of mouth, right? And
Exactly.
if it's a peer, that's great, but it's even better when that testimonial comes from a third, a qualified media outlet, that carries so much power when people see your name or your project on a website, and an editor talks about it, and usually coverage is positive because editors are not going to pick up content that they don't like. So the third party credibility really is why you need it, because you can't get it anywhere else.
Let me ask you this because I'm asked this a lot since we do
Hmm.
marketing. I'm usually asked, so do you all also do PR? And I say, no, those are two different aspects. So can you
Yes.
explain from your side how you differentiate marketing from PR?
I think there's definitely overlap, and I believe they can vary. There's a lot of synergies between all the different areas, but PR is definitely, it's a marathon. It's not a sprint. And if you look
Hmm.
at public relations, relations is the key word.
Hmm.
It's all about building relationships with the media, right? And with other influencers that can help you get the word about yourself. So I'd say that the personal aspect of it really is what makes it different, and what makes it uniquely powerful in the marketing mix.
Okay. Okay. I agree. And so, what are some goals that are actually necessary to set for your PR?
Well, you have to become clear about what your objective is. It's like, so why do you want to do PR? Because, and I've listed some of the typical goals that I hear a lot from designers. Everybody wants to grow their business, so you want to attract more clients. Maybe you have designed a product or products or a product line, and you'd like to sell more of that. Um, Elevating your personal and your business profile, so reputation management is always something that people are looking for too. And you may want to expand your business geographically, be go national or international. Are you looking for brand partnership? Become an influencer, like we say nowadays. Or maybe you have a boutique, a retail location that you want to draw traffic to. So it's really important that when you start doing PR, that the way you do it supports your business goals, because it all trickles down. You have your strategic business goals and your marketing plan, and PR. It's like it's one leg of that. And when the reason you need to be clear on this is because it's going to determine um, what kind of media you want to reach out to, and what kind of message, what your actual pitch is going to be. So sometimes people like to skip over this because it seems boring, but it's super critical that you go through this step.
That makes sense. Okay.
Okay.
And so, who are the media targets in PR?
Well, there's so many of them, and I will say that actually the advent of social media has made PR so much more exciting again, because as you all know, so many of the print publications have really suffered over the last 10 to 15, 20 years. A lot of them have gone away, but a lot of them have also stuck around, and I do think that especially in the design space, that print especially magazines, newspapers partly too, but especially magazines, be it national or regional, they still play a huge role, and it carries a lot of weight to be featured in them. But there's obviously also digital media outlets, which it's great because there's so many more places that you can pitch your product to now than there were 15 years ago, um, in the print and in the digital space. Broadcast, I listed it just because it is a category, but for most designers, it's marginally important. But you know,
Okay.
if you do have a, maybe you have a YouTube channel that does really well and you're good on camera, and it's possible, you know, that maybe you can get your own HGTV show. I don't want to discourage anybody, but
Right.
it's probably not the most likely. But so there's those different categories, and then I already alluded to that, but all of them have different reach, you know. So there's publications that target more of a regional um, audience, which I think is absolutely critical for designers, because a lot of your work is going to come from the area that you actually live in. So I always encourage designers to prioritize the regional outlets. Granted, I know everybody would like to be in Architectural Digest or
Right.
Elle Decor, but those publications it's really tough to get in there. So they're small, right?
Not to interrupt you, that's what I was going to ask you, because you actually had the image up here from Vogue, and then you were mentioning about,
Yes.
the architecture digest. How hard
Hmm.
is that, and what are some avenues that you've seen that can position others to get in those magazines?
Yes, it's very difficult to get into those magazines, and one of the reasons why I say start small is, and actually the last bullet point is very important, is what we call stacking your placements. And typically what happens in the media is that media watch other media, you know. So
Hmm.
if you can gather some smaller placements, you know, maybe it's the free paper that your town produces, you know, or
Okay.
maybe it's one of the magazines that's produced in your suburban area. It can be
Hmm.
anything, but don't, don't feel like those placements are not good enough, because what you do is you gather a lot of those placements, and that creates volume, and you can really draw attention from bigger media outlets that way. So you work your way up, right? So you never turn down a media placement unless it's in an outlet that's for, political, um or 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 other reasons it's just not appropriate. You want to be
Hmm.
choosy, but just because it's small, don't turn it down. But so my third bullet point is very important in that sense too, because usually media coverage is, it's not just going to come to you. Unfortunately, I wish it were that way, but you actually have to go out and and get it. And the way to do that is you look for magazines that you want to be featured in realistically. I'd say you can put Vogue or Arc Digest or Elle Decor on your vision board,
Hmm.
but don't go to them first, because chances are they're not going to pick you up, because you don't just need really great design, which probably you all have, but you also have to have a certain name and a certain cachet for those publications to consider you. So not to discourage you, but start with smaller ones and research them. Go buy the actual publications. Look through the pages and find articles that that feature something like you would like to be featured in, and then look who that editor is, and note the name and track
Hmm.
down that person. And then that's one of the people that are going to be on your media list, right? And
Okay.
when I say media list, we're not talking 100 people, right? I'm talking talking about maybe 3 to 5 names that you identify that are editors in publications that you are interested in being published in. Keep it, it's super important to keep it manageable, because otherwise you're going to get overwhelmed and
Hmm.
frustrated and probably never going to do it. So start small.
That
Mhm.
makes sense. And now you had a quote here, and you want to talk about
I
that?
love this quote. Yes. And of course, everybody knows Warren Buffett, right? And he said it takes 20 years to build a reputation and 5 minutes to ruin it. If you think about that, you'll do things differently. And this speaks about also when later on we'll talk a little bit about the PR mindset. And I think I think it's important not to be scared, not to be intimidated, but it's important to be honest, and to be nice. It really being a good at PR just means being a decent person, and treating other people with respect. And what he's talking about here is that, we see this often when a company enters into a crisis, and typically it's bigger companies like, Uber had a big scandal. Lots of companies run into all kinds of issues, and they have an entire team of PR people that handles that for them.
Right.
But basically it means, to establish your reputation, it takes a very long time. That's what all of you designers that are listening here probably have done over, God knows, maybe 5, maybe 10, maybe 20, maybe 30 years. But if you are out when you're talking to media, it's like, just always remember that anything that you can say could become the headline of an article. So don't be flippant, don't make bad jokes,
Hmm. Right.
just because
I've
because
heard a
they
lot of those.
yes, and that can be risky, because they really nothing. You always hear, like, let's keep this off the record, but
Right.
that doesn't really exist, right?
Okay.
So just be cognizant, and be professional, friendly but professional, I would say.
That's one thing I wanted to ask you about having it off the record. Where did that start? Because I hear that a lot. Talk about this time projects, and they say I want to have this off the record. What I mean, how did that all start?
That's an excellent question. I think it's just always been around in PR, and really the purpose of it was that, like, oftentimes the journalist is going to need more background information than
Hmm.
he's actually going to put in the article. And I could imagine people just use it to get the journalist on their side by slipping him some really confidential information, but say, what, I'm going to tell you this, but you can't tell anybody. This is off the record. And it I'm not saying it never works, but really the journalist is under no obligation,
Right.
you know, not
Right.
to use that. And it's the same thing with embargoed information, which just means that you share something with the media, but you tell them only to release the information at a certain point in time,
Hmm.
which that I think that's usually better respected. But I don't in our space, we usually don't have to deal with that. But if it came to that, it would probably not be a bad idea to consult a professional. So just give me a call when that happens to you. So.
I just always viewed that as an oxymoron that you're going to tell a journalist off the record, but that's just me. That's just me.
It is sort of a moot point because it really doesn't mean much these days. I
Right.
agree. Yeah.
So, what is the angle of the pitch? What is that all about?
So when you get to pitching, because I always like to say, the only pitch that is never going to get picked up is the one you never send. So
Hmm.
number one, it's important that you actually do it. And pitching may sound a little bit intimidating, but really all it is that, you package your information a certain way and you send an email to an editor or a journalist, or, that's really all it is. But what's important for you to consider is, what do you choose, and I would
Okay.
assume that often for designers it's usually a project, because you'd like to get your project featured in either in one of the trade magazines, or in one of the shelter magazines. And so when you choose the project, it it should have never been published, and
Right.
different different publications have slightly different rules about this. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you can't talk about it on your social media channels either. But usually publications are fine with that, just don't overdo it, but
Okay.
if you show a picture, or you show a picture of the work in progress, that's usually fine. But it shouldn't have, when you pitch it, it shouldn't have been published in another publication that could potentially be competitive.
Hmm.
And if it has been published, it's really important to disclose that. You
Okay.
could still
Okay.
try, but say, look, this has already been published in Midwest Living, but now you're pitching it to a digital outlet. That there's ways we can navigate that, but typically use new material. Photography is very important, and this also can scare people off a little bit, because they're like, oh my God, I have to get professional photography of all of my projects. And you don't necessarily have to do that, especially for a pitch. If you want to pitch it, you can pitch just a scouting shot, and
Okay.
you can say, if somebody is interested, you can either get professional photography done rather quickly, or if it were to be one of the few larger magazines, they may actually come and shoot it themselves, but that is quite rare. So I would say, if you can get professional photography, then do it. There's lots of ways you can use it, right? You can put it on your website, you can use it in your social media, if it does, so I think it's a worthwhile investment, especially for your more high profile projects.
Hmm.
And when I say that, I mean projects that typically the media are looking for, projects that have something unique, so maybe the space was really challenging and you came up with a unique design idea to make it work, you
Okay.
know that they love. Maybe there's unique storage in the space, which storage is huge. There's a lot of magazines that love that. But just try to find something that's special, and when you pitch, point that out. But when you send a photo, this is actually funny, I notice this a lot, that designers like to send detail shots, of
Yes.
accessories in the space. And
Yes.
and those are great, but not for an initial pitch. So when you
Okay.
initially share a project with the media, send them like room shots, so they can get an idea for the overall space. Because then if they're interested in something specific, you can always go back and get those shots after. But they want to see the entire space,
Right.
preferably from a couple of different angles, depending on whether or not that's possible.
Interesting that you had mentioned that, because I actually have a client that just completed a home renovation project, and she sent images of the product, and a lot of the images were of the doorknob, of the
Yes.
countertop, and just
Mhm.
of the details. And I
Yes.
was asking her, okay, so where is an image of the entire space? You see, oh, that's on the way. I'm like, well, you need to send that first, because I have no idea what I was looking at. So yes, I understand completely.
That's almost exactly what just happened to me with one of the designers I'm working with, and I think about it this way, if you send detailed shots of products, then the media are going to focus in on the product,
Right.
but
Right.
you're not pitching the product. you're
Hmm.
pitching your work. So
Exactly.
I always tell my clients, I'm like, pay yourself first.
Hmm.
It's like, think about your, and not that we don't want to mention products into space, and we can afterwards, but don't make that the focus of your pitch.
Right.
Right.
That
So
makes
yeah,
sense.
it's, and I think I think this is a very common misconception. So I hope this is helpful for everyone who's listening.
Oh yes. So now, what are some assets of the pitch?
It's really very simple, and it is important to keep it simple. Um, which is really my mantra when it comes to doing PR. It's like, keep it simple. Okay, so basically, like we had said, a pitch is just an email. Once you've identified your media target, you figure out their email address, you put together the pitch. And images are super important, but don't attach 10 high resolution images to your email. The editor is
Hmm.
most likely going to want to kill you.
Right.
So the way to do it, that works really well, and media love it, is you insert two, maybe three pictures into your email so they can see them right away when they open the email. And then you have a link that links to a Dropbox folder where you have additional images of the space. So your detailed shots could be in that Dropbox folder, but those should not be the images that the editor sees right away.
Okay.
And the other things to include, the images are the most important thing. A lot of editors will make decisions basically just based on the image that you sent them, because they
Okay.
will see if it has potential and if it is the right style, if it represents something that they are currently looking for or not. Then always include, obviously, it's obvious, but sometimes people don't, so I like to mention it. Include your name, where you are from, your business name, of course, also, and your contact info, phone number.
Hmm.
you know then do include a short summary of whatever you're pitching. So let's say you're talking about the project. Um, Write, I'd say, 2 to 3 sentences. You can bullet point it to make it even more easily understandable. So include, what the unique angle is, why you think it's interesting for that, not for you, but for the editor and the audience
Right.
that you're thinking of, right? So you have to tell the editor that you think this would be interesting for his or her audience for this and this reason. So include that if the homeowner is willing to participate, number one, and is maybe, if the homeowner's famous, it's a slam dunk.
Okay. Yeah.
But not all people are famous. But if there's an interesting backstory on the human interest level, that is helpful to include too, but keep
Okay.
it brief. Okay, whatever you do, don't write a novel. Don't spend 3 hours writing 2 pages and send that, because they're not going to read it. So basically, just keep it super short, and then at the end, you offer more information. You
Okay.
say, if this is something that might interest you, if you think this would be a good fit, please let me know. I'm happy to share more information. The last point is very important. Do not include attachments. So if you send the images, embed them in the email or
Hmm.
link to an external folder, but do not include attachments, because they're not going to open it, and it annoys them because it clogs up their inbox, because think they might get 100 emails a day. They get a lot of emails. So keep that in mind.
One question I had there, you had talked about if the homeowners were okay. Now, what happens on the opposite end? The
Hmm.
homeowner does not want it to be publicized. How do you handle it?
Well, then you can't,
Okay.
is the short answer. But there's two ways you could do it. It's like, sometimes the homeowner is okay with the space being used in PR, but they don't want to be part of the story.
Okay. Okay.
So there's two. It's like you have to get their approval anyway,
Right.
but it might just be the space, or it might be the space and them.
Okay.
Makes sense?
That makes sense. That
Okay.
makes sense. So with the reporters, how do you build that relationship with them?
Um, it's really not so different from building other relationships, and I've heard the comparison to dating before, just don't be overly pushy.
Hmm.
Number one, which I think a lot of people have the opposite problem, and are holding back too much. So it's just about building any kind of long-term relationship, that you're in. So when you send an email, and typically it always starts over email, unless you're maybe at an event where there's media, which is great. If there are events in your community and you know that media are going to be there, by all means go and talk to them, but
Hmm.
just get to know them. Just make sure they know who you are, and then if and when you want to pitch them, that'll be very helpful because they know your name, they've met you personally. That's
Right.
actually priceless. But when you send emails, make them personal. Add in, don't be all business. Also don't try to be their best friend right away, but maybe say something about an article that they've written that you read and liked, you know or if you met them in person, obviously, refer back to that meeting. But email is always best. Even right now, it's like I really never call an editor unless
Okay.
we schedule a call, you know. But I always reach out via email. And editors do read their emails. They will not always respond. Um, which,
Okay.
and you know what, a lot of they try, but honestly they're just so overwhelmed with email, even
Right.
more than most of us, that sometimes they just don't get to all of them, and we'll get to the follow-up at the bottom. But what's really important is that they understand that you have thought about why what you have to offer them is important for them.
Okay.
you don't only think about what you want to tell them, but think about what makes it interesting for them,
Hmm.
right? And then offer more information, but don't overwhelm them with everything that you have, because they can't absorb, nobody can absorb that much information. Just make sure you have it in the backhand in case you need it, but don't send it all at once. And do not follow up excessively. Okay, so you send your first pitch, and ideally just sort of go and do your thing.
Hmm.
Don't obsess over it. Just let it be. If they respond right away, great. Wow, that's amazing. But if they don't, then I typically say send one follow-up email. Okay,
Okay.
wait at least a couple of days, and then send the same email that you sent and just forward it to them again and say, I am just checking in. I know you're super busy, but I was just wondering if this might be of interest to you. I'd love to provide more information. And then if you don't hear back, it probably means that it's not a fit for them right now. It
Okay.
doesn't mean that they hated your project or your product that you pitched. It doesn't mean that they don't like you. It just means that what you sent them right this moment is not a fit for the type of content that they're looking for. So
Okay.
then let it be, and go back to them when you have new content, new information. Don't follow up about the same thing 5 different times, because that gets annoying.
Right.
So, but don't feel like you can never go back. Go back again when you have new information, and try again.
Okay. So now what happens if you email them and then they email you and say, okay, it's awesome project, but right now it's not the time, maybe next month. Should you email them next month if you don't hear from them, or should you
Yes,
just
yes,
wait
absolutely.
to hear
Then
from
I
them?
would. Yep.
Okay. So you,
Then
okay.
I definitely would. And that's okay if you establish a dialogue with them and they tell you they're interested and give you somewhat of a timeline, even if they don't, and say, this is really interesting to me, it just doesn't work for me right now. Then go back and, maybe after a month or two and say, oh, you said you were interested in this. I was
Hmm.
just wondering if by now you have an idea, if and how you're going to use it. Then that would be completely fine. Yes.
Okay. Okay.
Mhm.
That makes sense. Now, you had talked about the PR mindset. What is that all about?
So really, and if you look at what I wrote, I want to make it approachable for people, because people think PR is they don't really know what it is, but
Hmm.
really it just means building relationships with the media, in this case, when we're talking about media relations. And the way to do that is, just be nice, just be honest, be yourself. Don't try to make yourself sound more important or different, or just be yourself,
Hmm.
because the interesting thing is, and I remember when I first my first media tour to New York City, which was about my second week on the job, and it was very intimidating. And we met with all these big name media, and I was just in awe, and it's like, but in reality, then you go into the meeting and they're just people like you,
Right.
and they have lives and they have families and
Hmm.
they have pets. And I always say, and because it's kitchen and bath, I can say it, it's like everybody pees, it's like they're just normal people. they're
Right.
nothing they're nothing. They are special, but they're not, so don't, just be yourself.
Hmm.
People, that's what people like best, that's what editors like best. Then, and I alluded to this before, but this really is a pet peeve of mine, and is what I often used to fight over with my marketing people. Sorry, Jason.
Oh no, it's okay. It's okay. Go ahead.
but but when you're talking to the media, it's not about what's important to you. It's not about what your message is. It's about whether that message or that project or that product resonates with the media and their audience,
Hmm.
so it's like you have to sort of flip your perspective, right? And in the end, if and when you do that, it turns into a win-win relationship, because the media are always looking for content, so you can help them by providing good content. They want that, they need that, they have to get it from somewhere, so you might as well be the one providing it. And if you package it the right way, um, the message will be what you want it to be and what you need it to be. So it's definitely a two-way street. And this speaks to my next point, which I always used to say when somebody would come to me when I worked at Kohler, for instance, and somebody wanted a press release about a duo strainer. And I'd say to
Interesting.
them, I'm
Interesting.
like, but who really cares? If you go to Home Depot and you need one, you want to buy one, that's great, but the media are not going to care. So
Right.
I don't want to I don't want to send them information that I know they're not going to care about,
Hmm.
right? So, and this is an extreme example, but you get the idea.
Right.
Just think about, do they care about it?
Hmm.
Is it good for them? Not just, is it good for you? And I think patience is a virtue in life and in business, and especially in PR, because you PR is something that you have to invest in a little bit, but consistently, and when I say invest, I mean not a lot of money, not a lot of time, but maybe a little bit of both. And
Okay.
that's and being consistent and a little bit persistent, but not overly pushy. That's what's gonna bring you success. And the most important thing is just don't give up, because if you pitch something, if you don't pitch anything, you've lost already, right? Because
Hmm.
you're never going to get publicity if you don't put your information out there. But if you get rejected or ignored, it's okay. It's not about you. It's not about you. It's just that whatever you provided was not the right fit at that moment in time. But that doesn't mean that it's never going to be.
That makes sense.
So, and this is, I love this quote, and we talked about it. So, this lady is some graphic designer, but that's not famous, but I just
Okay,
want
because
to.
I was going to ask, because I've never heard of her. I've actually heard of Warren, but I've never heard. So I was going to ask you, who is
I,
this? Okay.
I think her name is fabulous, and
Okay.
the quote really speaks to what we're trying to do. Is like every great design begins with an even better story. And and that's how I'd want you to think about your design work too, and it's not just about what you see in the picture, but if you can convey the value that you infused into the space, not with product but with your ideas, and
Hmm.
and with your skills, and how you help the homeowner get the perfect kitchen or bath. That's really what's important, and that that makes the complete PR story, not just the picture, but what your contribution was to making this happen.
Okay. So now you've handed us an overview of what PR is. So talk to us a little bit about what you do now in your organization.
So I had been, ever since I left my corporate job, I'd really been trying to figure out a good way to help specifically interior designers and kitchen and bath designers, obviously, to to get PR. And in reality, if I do it all for you, it's not going to be cost effective. That's
Hmm.
just the nature of the business, because just like designers like to get paid, PR people also like to get paid.
Right.
So I was trying to come up with a better solution, and I did, and I actually just launched it, well, about a little over a month ago. I call it the Design PR Insider Membership. And what it is, it's almost like a mini retainer where you join an exclusive group of designers that I share information with. And what I share with the group is specific media opportunities. So I say, this publication is looking for this kind of information, send it here. So it's very, very specific. And it's been very popular with the group, I have to say. And we've already had some success, which is great to see.
That's
So
awesome.
it means if you put in the effort, it will work for you. The other thing that I do is, so I talk to my media friends that work at, the right publications. We just did Design Milk. I talked with the the editorial director for the Meredith Special Interest publication. So Beautiful Kitchens and Baths, Dream Kitchens and Baths. Those are a couple of her books, and she told me exactly, she's always looking for great content, and she told me exactly how people need to pitch her,
Hmm.
you know, what they need to include, what kinds of projects are interesting to her. So I share this type of insider information
Okay.
with my group. And every week, every Friday at 11 Central, I have a 1 hour call with them where really they can ask me anything they want. So they can get advice on how to pitch a specific project, what to include in a pitch, really any questions that they have. And lately we've had a lot of conversations about how to communicate during this time. Is it appropriate to
Right. Right.
communicate? Is it not? So we touch on a lot of topics. And then I also share just general PR insights and tips that either I put together or I bring in other industry experts, which hopefully you will join me in the not too distant future for one of those. But just to kind of help put PR in perspective and how it works in the greater context of the business. We do have an insider community, which really is just a Facebook group, but it's a secret Facebook group, and I put a lot of content in there, and it also serves as sort of a accountability group where people come in and everybody can ask questions. I'm in there every day. I answer questions, and I give tips on how to pitch certain things. Really, and anything the community needs. Then I think the really a special perk of the membership is our media newsletter, and I'm working
Mm-hmm.
on the first one. I'm putting it together right now, actually, and it'll probably go out sometime next week. But every one of my members gets to submit projects to me, and I teach them how to package the information. They supply it to me, I put it in a newsletter, and I send it to my media list, which contains well over 1,000 really, really great contacts,
Now that's awesome.
that
That's awesome.
matter in this industry. Yeah.
That is
So
awesome. That's awesome.
that's really what it is. Yeah.
Okay. Anyone that's either on the call now or that's listening to the replay, how do they contact you?
hmm So the easiest way is you go to my website, and it's called getinkdiy.com. And there's quite a bit of information on there, and there's a specific tab that says membership. And if you click on that, it'll tell you basically just the expanded version of what I just walked through. And it also actually, there's, I have a special, it's still really my launch special, but I have a special where you can get in the first month for half price, which that amounts to all of $123.50, which is less than you would pay a publicist per hour. A
Yes.
lot less, actually. So if anybody is interested in checking it out, please go there, and or you can email me also at Miriam, Mirjam, at getinkdiy.com. Or you can reach out to Jason, and he can always, link us up.
Any questions that anyone might have? And I actually have one here already.
Okay.
You had talked earlier about reusing images that when you pitch, it should be something new. But if they're interested in getting into the larger publication, how do you address that if you've already had it in one of the lower publications, like you had talked about, getting it at the local level before it heads to that national level? How do you address that?
So when you pitch a project to a regional publication and it gets accepted, that you've nixed your chances of being covered in one of the big nationals.
Oh, okay.
Yes,
Okay.
that ship would have sailed.
Okay.
So if you want to pitch one of the large national publications, and we talk, it's like Arc Digest, All the Core, How's Beautiful, Veranda, even some, and the special interest pubs at Meredith, they work the same way, or Traditional Home, any of the big name publications, they will require exclusivity of your content.
Okay.
The good thing is that a lot of them may come and shoot the content. But so if you want that, then pitch that first and wait until you have an answer. And if and when if they say yes, fabulous, congratulations. But if they say no, then you can go to your next tier down. So when you pitch, always start with your top tier and then work your way down.
Okay, that makes sense. I have another question here. Now, what if they have a product but not an actual design?
But you already have the actual physical product?
I believe they do. Yes.
Okay, probably. Yes, and absolutely. There's a lot of opportunity to pitch products, and it's what I did most often. When I worked in corporate because we were a product manufacturer, right?
Hmm.
It's just that you're going to have to target slightly different editors and your coverage is going to be a little different. So the editors at the magazines that cover product are called market editor.
Okay. Okay.
So if you look up the magazine, then find the market editor and send it to that person. And typically, it's really difficult to get feature coverage for products unless your story and how the product developed is amazing.
Hmm.
You may be able to place that somewhere, but oftentimes it's just, when you flip through a magazine and there's these product lineups, where they show 7 different faucets or 5 different chairs or things of that nature. So the market editors are the people who create that. And I would encourage you that buy buy magazines, look at websites, see where your whatever product it is, where those types of products are featured, and then do a little research and figure out how to contact those people.
Okay. And we have another question in regarding TV spots. How do you get on Good Morning America, Fox Saturday? How do you get featured there?
Well, that's an excellent question, and I it works a little bit like when I was talking about stacking your placements,
Hmm.
in broadcast, that it's even more extreme. So if you to be on Good Morning America or Fox and Friends or whatever, any of the big national shows,
Hmm.
it's like I just recently wrote a blog post that said, "Oh, so you want to be on the Oprah show?" So you can check out my blog too about
Right.
that because it's very difficult, and unless you have significant media placements already under your belt, it's not going to happen. But I would say if that's something that interests you, then start with your local TV stations,
Okay.
like maybe, or try to contribute a column to your local paper, you know, start a YouTube channel. It's like you're gonna have to get some experience and exposure under your belt, and that doesn't mean that you're ever going to be on the Today Show. Um, I've struggled with this for a lot of my career and I have actually, I've taken people and products on the Oprah show, the Today Show, Good Morning. I've been to all of those shows, but I worked for a massively big brand and we had great products, and it only happened once or twice for both of those in 14 years. So just to put it in perspective, it's
Hmm.
I think it's great to dream, but don't get hung up on it. Just take baby steps that maybe one day will get you there, but enjoy the process, and enjoy the smaller placements.
Awesome. And that was all of the live questions. And then, like I had mentioned earlier, there were a lot of people that mentioned to me that they would not be on live, but they are going to
Yeah,
watch the replay. So, for anyone that has questions after the fact, send them into me or to Miriam, and we'll be sure to get them answered. Okay.
absolutely. Yeah.
Miriam, I appreciate your time and thank you for being here and for giving us all of this great information on PR.
Of course. I so appreciate you having me, and it's been a real pleasure to get reconnected with the kitchen and bath community. So thank you for having me.
Awesome. So next month, we're going to be talking about training for the kitchen professional, and we're going to have Jan on from the Vestibule School of Design, and she's going to be talking about some tips there. So we hope to have you here July 22nd. All right. And everybody have a good day. All right. Bye bye.